What did we learn from the latest Buffalo Bills OTAs? We're going to break it all down today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Wednesday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, or if you're joining us on the YouTube channel, your first watch every day. Well, I know yesterday on the podcast I said today would be herd mentality, but it's going to be tomorrow because we need to respond to all the things that we learned coming out of Buffalo Bills OTAs on Tuesday. There's a lot to dig into. Ken Dorsey met with the media for his first time as the Bills offensive coordinator. There's participation updates I want to get into, offensive line updates, standouts, punting stuff. We've got a loaded Wednesday show for you, and tomorrow will be herd mentality. If you're watching on YouTube channel, you'll notice two things. First of all, still working on the sunburn. We are peeling big time here. And then secondly, shout out 26 Shirts. My guy Del Reed over there got my Punt God shirt in the mail on Tuesday afternoon, and I had to wear it for the podcast today. This thing is awesome, just like everything that 26 Shirts does. And I love supporting those people and all the great work that goes along with selling awesome shirts, the charitable component. You love all of that and what they mean for the Buffalo community. So shout out to my guys over at 26 Shirts. Always great stuff. So like I said, Ken Dorsey, Bills offensive coordinator, he spoke to the media for his first time as OC on Tuesday afternoon. And it was very much a get to know you session. Not a lot of specific type things were asked, more just him and his journey and what it's been like taking on the role, those types of things. But the biggest takeaway that I had from listening to Ken Dorsey was what he said about being on the sideline and potentially transitioning to being in the booth as the offensive coordinator. And I've been asked about this on herd mentality. If I had a preference on where play callers should be. And I think that's a question for them to answer for themselves. It's about where they're the most comfortable to be in a good rhythm to call plays. And we talked about Brian Daboll, and early on in his tenure with the Bills, he started out on the sideline and then eventually went to the booth. And I thought that had more to do with Josh Allen being a young player and needing Brian Daboll to be there on the sidelines for him after each series where, he took massive steps as a player, and it was no longer necessary for Daboll to be on the sideline, and he could be up in the booth where it's a lot more advantageous for seeing the field and less distractions, and you could just get into the rhythm of calling plays. And, I think for the most part, non-head coach play callers are in the booth unless they have a young quarterback. And I think it would be quite difficult. I think about Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and Andy Reid, some of the best play callers in the NFL, and they have to be on the sideline, and they're the head coach. You can't be the head coach and not be down there. But I think if you're going to be one of those play callers that is on the sideline, then you need to have really trusted individuals in the booth to give you good information. And it's not just to give you good information, but they have to be able to communicate that very, very clearly. And I listened to Sean McVay on a podcast with Kyle Shanahan, and McVay spent time under Shanahan before they both became head coaches. And McVay was that guy in the booth for Shanahan, and they did a really cool podcast together discussing some of those dynamics. And, there's a lot of particulars that goes into it. And for Ken Dorsey, I think we'll see him in the booth. And because I think it's going to be best for him, and it's going to be best for those dynamics that are just difficult to find, where Ken Dorsey in year one on the job, having those trusted voices in his ear to communicate information and how he wants it I think all of that's going to be a challenge. But what's really unique about Ken Dorsey taking over as the offensive coordinator is, as we know, he's not new to the team. He's been the quarterbacks coach for 3 years. And part of what he talked about in weighing out the sideline versus on the booth was that he did have that experience in hand on the sideline with the players. And he said it helps to have that time spent with Josh Allen on the sidelines. And he even referenced Dawson Knox and Stephon Diggs and Mitch Morrison, what it's like to be with those guys on the sidelines. And I think that's going to help him get to the booth, right? He's already had that time, and he understands how players are wired and what makes them tick. Where as a completely new offensive coordinator coming in that didn't have any experience with these players, you could see them having a bit more of a challenge with this. But Dorsey didn't commit on what he would do in terms of the booth or the sideline, but it's obviously something that he's figuring out, and he definitely gave some very generic answers about how, they're just taking it one day at a time and getting the communication piece down, and then they'll go from there. So that was an interesting part of his conversation with the media. I also thought it was interesting how he just talked about core philosophy type stuff, and being mindful of who they are and the best way to score points, and their objective is to win the game and do whatever it means to win the game. And whether that means throwing it a lot or running it a lot, definitely that same Brian Daboll mentality where, hey, we'll evolve the offense week to week if we need to, based on the opponent, to do whatever it takes to win football games. And you could kind of glean from a lot of his responses that he thinks there's a lot of similarities between him and Daboll, which I would apply to the philosophy side of things, and that I still expect this to be a pass-aggressive offense. Now, we talked about having the threat of running the football, which is a phrase that we heard from Daboll. It's a phrase that we've heard from Sean McDermott. You have to have the threat of running the football. And when you run the ball, there's a competitive physical component of the game that you embrace, and it's an important piece of playing the sport, right, in general. But you can sense that there was an understanding that this is a high-powered passing offense, and they want to continue to cling to that type of stuff because it's what made them successful in the past. Now, he didn't come out and say that, but if you read between the lines and some of the ways that he compared himself to Daboll, I certainly picked that up as a takeaway. Now, one thing that was interesting regarding his own comments and things that we can reflect back on that Josh Allen has said about Ken Dorsey is that he's a very competitive dude. And that goes without saying. I mean, Ken Dorsey's one of the greatest college football players of all time, and he had a lot of success at Miami, and they won a lot of football games, and they won the national championship. And you don't get that done as a quarterback if you're not an extremely competitive guy. But he's kind of commented on that competitive nature that he has, Josh Allen has. But then also on Tuesday, Gabriel Davis and Mitch Morse commented on the competitive nature of Ken Dorsey. Gabe Davis said, quote, he wants to attack every play. Mitch Morse said, the Holy Spirit comes out of him every once in a while when reflecting on the competitiveness of Ken Dorsey. Don't you love that? I do. I love hearing that a lot. I want to know that you have an offensive coordinator to go with your quarterback. We know Josh Allen is one of the most competitive athletes in the world. And I think when you're going to be the offensive coordinator for a player like Josh Allen, you got to be running at the same pace, right? You have to understand each other. And the fact that they're like-minded in that regard, I absolutely love. Not to mention that we know that Josh Allen's a big Will Ferrell fan. And part of Ken Dorsey's press conference was a Talladega Nights reference. And so you think about Joe Brady and the Office commonality that he has with Josh Allen and Ken Dorsey, and dropping the Will Ferrell movie quote. You could tell that there's a lot of like-minded people around Josh Allen in terms of just that goofy side that they all have, but also that really deep-rooted competitive nature that is at the core of who they are as football players. We've been talking to Built Bar about some granola bars, and they have delivered. Built granola bars are here. Built granola bars come in 3 unbelievable flavors: chocolate peanut butter, chocolate coconut, and white chocolate berry. And if you want to try all 3, you can get them all in a mixed box at built.com right now. And these are so different from the bars and the puffs. Built granola bars are loaded with granola. It's a perfect combination of crunch and chewiness, but just like bars and puffs, these babies are packed with protein and covered in 100% real chocolate. We're talking 150 calories, 15 grams of protein, and only 4 grams of sugar in Built granola bars. They will change your world. Built has cracked the code to better granola. They're the perfect healthy snack to pack in your lunch, take on the road, or eat as a snack. And they're just like the puffs and the bars, where they're made with collagen protein, which your body will actually absorb more efficiently, and they provide a ton of health benefits. You can order these right now. Like I said, 3 delicious new flavors. Try them out. Get yours today at built.com. And we got a deal for you. Use our promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. So let's talk now about the participation, right? Guys that weren't in attendance and a few that were, that stands out. Now, the headliner in terms of the guy that wasn't there was Josh Allen, quarterback. The first OTAs that he's missed since he's joined the team. And we all know the reason why. He is playing in the match on June 1st. So the day that this podcast drops, you can watch Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes play in a golf match against Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. And I'm really excited for it. I love all the Josh Allen content I can get. I'm sure you're the same way. But to see this guy on live TV playing golf, something else that he loves to do, being competitive, letting his hair down a little bit and having fun, I can't wait to see it. And obviously, I want him to win. So that's going to be really fun. But there's also that part of me that is just like still in shock that the Bills have this type of player that's chosen to play with Pat Mahomes and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. To do something like this, a guy that's talked about as being on the cover of Madden. I mean, this is stuff we've dreamed about as Bills fans. And honestly, we just wanted to have a good quarterback, right? We just wanted somebody that can give you a chance to win 9 or 10 games and get to the playoffs and compete. Well, God has given us the dude in Josh Allen. And just knowing that we get to watch him in this golf match, it's just another reminder of how special this person is that is the franchise quarterback for the Buffalo Bills and the face of this football team. So enjoy the match. Go Josh Allen, even if it means we have to root for Patrick Mahomes. So Josh Allen not at OTAs. He's preparing for the match, which we all can't wait to watch. Other players not in attendance include both of the safeties, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, Ed Oliver at defensive tackle, and linebacker Andre Smith. So Josh Allen, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Ed Oliver, Andre Smith not in attendance. And the players that were not at practice but were rehabbing, and of course this information I do need to give credit, it comes from Elena Getzenberg. Elena Getzenberg, she shared this information. Rehabbing from injuries that were not at practice: offensive lineman Ike Bacher, offensive tackle Spencer Brown, tight end Dawson Knox, corner Trey White. So the usual suspects there. And then Khalil Shakir was there, but working with the trainers off to the side. And then, if I'm not mistaken, Matt Marino reported that Isaiah Hodgins had an injury, and he was working off to the side at some point as well. So those players weren't in practice, but we know about their injuries. And that means that 2 players were there: Daequan Jones, a defensive tackle, and Roger Saffold. And last week, based on the Tuesday practice that we got reports from, those guys weren't there. And we talked about, wow, these are new players. They're veterans, but they're new players to the team. And it was a little bit surprising that they weren't there. Well, this time around, Daequan Jones and Roger Saffold both in attendance. Now, with Josh Allen not in attendance, that means Case Keenum got an opportunity to run the offense. And I think that's a good thing, right? We want Case Keenum to be ready as Josh Allen's backup to be able to step in and run this offense if necessary. And I think if Josh Allen's there, sometimes it can create some challenges for him to get those reps because you want Josh to get those reps. So I think it was good that Case got a chance to be the starter and work with the other starting players and develop some chemistry with not just the players, but also Ken Dorsey. And Joe Buscaglia of The Athletic, he wrote about Case Keenum's performance in his recap article over on The Athletic, which I highly encourage you to read. And I just want to share one sentence from his report. He said, all throughout the session, and this is referring to Case Keenum, all throughout the session, Case Keenum carried good zip and placement accuracy on all of his underneath throws to help his receivers turn up the field. And I think that's what you can expect from Case Keenum. This is an experienced quarterback that is going to get the ball out of his hands and into the hands of his playmakers, right? This isn't a guy that's got a big arm that's going to launch the ball down the field and do the things that Josh Allen does, but he can come in and keep his head above water, find completions, and get the football into the hands of playmakers. And so the offense will look very different if and when Case Keenum ever has to run it. But to just kind of read that sentence and take away that it felt like he was comfortable and was accurate and had good zip on underneath throws, that means Case Keenum is being Case Keenum. And that's all you ever want, right? That's what I'm looking for out of Case, is to come in and be that stabilizing quarterback if he ever has to step onto the field. And, my feel from reading those things is that that's exactly what he was on the Tuesday practice. Now let's talk about the punt god and the special teams. Matt Bove, he put out a tweet with a video of Matariza launching some punts, one really impressive in terms of like hitting 70, 80 yards, 5 yards of hang time. And then he went on to share several more videos. And so I have some things to share based on what we learned from those videos, but I also want to share some information from Joe Buscaglia and Matt Marino. But my big takeaway from watching those videos of Matariza punting was who was fielding those punts, right? Because that's a big question mark for this team, is who's going to be the punt returner. And from what I could figure out based on the very limited sample size that was available to us, is that the two players getting chances to return punts were wide receiver Marquez Stevenson and UDFA running back Raheem Blackshear out of Virginia Tech. Now, I think we expected Stevenson, who had opportunities to do that last year in the regular season. But Blackshear is interesting to me. And Blackshear was not a productive return guy in college at Rutgers or Virginia Tech. In fact, he was very underwhelming. Let me give you his career production as a punt and kick returner. So Raheem Blackshear had 11 opportunities to field a punt in college. 6 of those were returned for 21 yards, which is an average of 3.5, which is incredibly low. He had 3 fair catches and then 2 muffs. So 9 attempted fielded punts, 6 returned, 3 fair catches, 2 muffs. I mean, that's shaky. That's really shaky stuff. And then he also had 37 kick returns and only an average of 19.2 yards. So it's a little bit interesting that he's getting these opportunities, but his resume is not good when it comes to the return game. And so I'm pretty anxious to see how this all plays out. I think it's worth noting that the guy that I think has a really good chance to be the punt returner, Khalil Shakur, he was injured and didn't get a chance to play. And I wonder if he would have been on the receiving end of those Matariza punts if he was healthy. Now, talking more about Araiza, the punter, I wasn't there. I can't comment on that, but I do want to share what Joe Buscaglia and Matt Marino shared in their practice recaps. I want to start with Matt Marino. And one of the big questions with Matt Araiza is whether or not he can hold. And so Matt Marino, of the Shout Buffalo Football podcast, Syracuse.com, from his practice recap, he said Tyler Bass got some work in at the end of 11-on-11, and veteran Matt Hawk continues to be the only one to hold for Bass in the open portion of practice. So again, I don't have any idea what's going on in the practices that we don't get any reports from. I know the Bills use their specialists a lot in the field house, and we're not sure what's going on there. But as far as the media has had the opportunity to observe, the only person holding for Tyler Bass has been Matt Hawk. And so take that for whatever it's worth. But, if Araiza is going to have a real chance to be this punter for this team, it's going to come with him taking on those holding duties, and it would feel like you'd want to give him that work now. And again, that doesn't mean it hasn't happened or it's not happening behind closed doors, but in the 2 sessions that the media's had a chance to observe, they've not seen Matariza work as the holder for Tyler Bass. Now, on the punting dynamics of the practice with Matariza, this comes courtesy of Joe Buscaglia from The Athletic. In his outstanding practice recap, he said, quote, kicking into the wind brought some interesting results. Each player, and he's referring to Matt Hawk and Matariza, got the chance to kick against the wind, and while Araiza carried the better average yardage, 45.25 yards to Matt Hawk's 42.75, the rookie averaged significantly less hang time. Hawk averaged 4.41 seconds of hang time in his punts against the wind, while Araiza only averaged 3.81 seconds. Araiza's average hang time with the wind was 4.05 seconds, which was even less than Hawk's kicking against the wind. And so we all love that one video, which Joe B also told us was a touchback. The rawness of Matt Araiza is still very much a thing, right? This guy's got a lot of work to do, a very inexperienced punter, talented, but can he control the leg? Can he get hang time? And can he be the holder? We still have major questions about all three of those things. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. You can find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball finals, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. It's BetOnline, and it's where the game starts. I got more to talk about, have some odds and ends things to discuss, and I really want to focus in on the offensive line as the leadoff in this next segment, where Heather Prusak, she tweeted a video of Aaron Kromer working with the offensive line, and in front of Aaron Kromer was what I would presume is the Bills' starting offensive line at this point. It was left tackle Dion Dawkins, left guard Roger Saffold, center Mitch Morse, right guard Ryan Bates, right tackle David Quessenberry, with Spencer Brown not available with the injury. And so this is pretty much what I expected. But one of the talking points that has existed this offseason has been, is Ryan Bates going to be the left guard, or is Roger Saffold going to be the left guard? And this very small sample size, right, one video clip, suggests that Roger Saffold is getting that opportunity to play left guard. And I remember it's, you know, the talking points have been Ryan Bates was really good at left guard last year, and Dion Dawkins played great next to him, and Mitch Morse played great next to him, and he's the long-term player, and you'd want to kind of keep that together. And then at right guard, having Roger Saffold there next to a young player like Spencer Brown would be a benefit to Spencer Brown. Well, as I suspected, that's not what the Bills are doing. Left guard, Roger Saffold; right guard, Ryan Bates. So that doesn't mean it could change. But this is definitely the nugget that we can take away, is that that's the plan for Roger Saffold to be at left guard. And like I talked about on Herd Mentality a few weeks ago, you know, Roger Saffold has been a left guard in the NFL since 2016. He's played his last 6,000 snaps at left guard in games, right? Not to mention all the practice time. He's played 10,062 snaps in the NFL, and 9,208 of those have come as a left side player, 92% of the snaps, and every snap since 2016. Meanwhile, Ryan Bates has played a total of 575 career snaps, and that's being cross-trained at multiple positions. So there's a good, sound argument for Ryan Bates to stay at left guard. I think there's a better argument for it to be Roger Saffold, who at this point in his career, relearning all, or I guess undoing all of that muscle memory and learning how to play on the other side and becoming more comfortable, just doesn't make sense, where you have the younger player that has less experience in Ryan Bates, that you feel better as a guy that you can move around a little bit. So that's how it appears the Bills are attacking things right now as it relates to the offensive line. Now, a couple of other odds and ends here. Both Matt Marino and Joe Buscaglia praised rookie running back James Cook for his ability to catch the football, which is not really surprising. But the big takeaway here is there was a lot of wind at the practice today. And you heard about some drops from the other running backs, but not James Cook. And a video that we got a chance to see on Twitter was Ken Dorsey throwing the football to some of the wide receivers. And there was a lot of drops in that video segment. And I do think that the wind was kind of moving the ball a little bit, and there was some sloppiness catching the football. Well, James Cook handled it well. And you've also read from Marino and Buscaglia about the relationship that Devin Singletary has with James Cook. They train together, right? They've been training together, and now they get to be in the backfield together, and they're going to have to work together, right? This is a good thing. And Devin Singletary talked, and he said, look, it's both of our dreams to play in the NFL, and we get to do it in the same backfield for a great organization. It sounds like they both have a great mindset right now. And I think them being so familiar with each other is really going to help them both absorb the responsibilities that come with being the 1A and 1B back for this offense. And so it's kind of cool to not only hear the positive reports on James Cook, but also some more details from Devin Singletary about working with James Cook and kind of his mindset there. Matt Marino also commented on Isaiah McKenzie. He did on the podcast that he did. Matt Marino during the Shout Buffalo podcast and Joe Buscaglia in his recap article praised Isaiah McKenzie, said he was running routes extremely well, showing good footwork, the ability to get in and out of breaks. So you love to hear that. And you hear it from multiple people. And then you also heard it from the same scenario. Marino during the Shout Buffalo football podcast. Go listen to it. It's phenomenal. And then Marquez Stevenson from Joe Buscaglia's recap article. The drops are problematic, And if I'm not mistaken, I mean, it was like against air. And I think I read that there was 4 drops against air from Marquez Stevenson, which is not ideal. That's not what you want to be hearing about him in year 2 at this point. Obviously a long way to go before the season, but I'm not getting some strong vibes here when it comes to Stevenson and his consistency catching the football. You know, I think that's the most important thing, right? I've had a chance to ask Sean McDermott about receivers one time and what he looks for, and he gave me a very basic answer, but a true answer. He said, I'm looking for guys that can get open and catch the football. Well, he's not catching the football. And you saw that exchange between Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs where Josh said, hey, Steph, get here. And when you get here, get open and catch a football. Well, you got to be able to catch a football. It's a fundamental task of a wide receiver. And Stevenson has not shown consistency so far this offseason. All right, folks. So there you have it. All of our takeaways that we learned from Buffalo Bills OTAs. My understanding is that every Tuesday, these sessions will be open to the media. And that means that we'll have an opportunity to have takeaways. So you can expect this to be what we do next Wednesday as well. And we'll probably hear from different players and different coaches. And so that should be fun. Tomorrow will be herd mentality. Unless there's some massive breaking news, we are doing herd mentality tomorrow. So don't miss it. Make sure that you are subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. And I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.